Hi guys, I'm Ben from Adaptalux and welcome back to the Adaptalux HQ where I'm shooting a dragon egg today. This is a replica Game of Thrones dragon egg from the Noble collection, so it's super detailed and a really just nice little thing to have if you're a fan of the show. I want to make this thing look really interesting and epic, make it come to life with some nice colors. This egg, as you can see, has got some nice browns and red tones in it, so I want to use red light to make the thing look like it's about to hatch a fiery dragon. I'm going to be, of course, using Adaptalux lighting to do this, but I've got a lot of other techniques and bits of equipment that you're going to want to see to turn your image from something like this, fairly plain and boring white light with a white background, into something like this. We're going to be using smoke, red light, black backdrops and all kinds of other techniques to make this thing look as epic as possible. The first thing that I need to do is get my camera set up and place my egg down on the table behind me. So as you can see, I've placed my egg down on the table, and while this is not a very interesting shot, this is going to be our starting composition. A nice tight crop on this egg is going to allow for a little bit of interesting smoke to come out of the sides. I've got my smoke machine warming up down here, so we're going to be making use of that, and we're going to be adding several other photographic elements like lighting, backdrops, a shooting surface, and maybe blocking out some of the ambient light in this room as well. The first thing I'm going to do is change the shooting surface that the egg is sat on and add a dark backdrop. So straight away, as you can see, adding a little bit of black into the background and onto the surface has made this automatically look a lot more epic. However, you can see that we're now on ISO 10,000 to try and expose this thing using the natural light coming from the skylights in this room. So we're going to need to add a little bit of lighting. But first, let's take a look at the shooting surface and the backdrop that I've chosen. The surface, first of all, is one of our photo boards. So these have a nice printed texture on them. These are completely smooth, but you can't tell with the naked eye the difference between this and the real thing. So this is a nice rustic wooden surface, which I thought went quite well with dragon egg. Raising a dragon, I suppose, would be done in I don't know, some sort of shack or wooden building at the very least. So this, I think, matches, even though you're not going to see too much of this grain. It's a nice dark texture, which should make sure that we don't get any reflected light coming from the white surface, and this thing still looks nice and dark. Back here, I placed a black backdrop. We don't actually have a black backdrop for our main studio backdrop, but this is going to do just fine. This is a big piece of black plastic perspex, so it's a little bit reflective, but it's far enough back that that's not going to affect us at all, and that's going to give us a nice solid black background. The next thing that I need to do is add some lighting. Now that we've got that nice black background, we've got a very high ISO, and I want to bring that down at least by a little, but the more important aspect of our lighting is adding some effects. I want to add some red light and maybe some orange light as well to make this thing look all fiery and dragon-like. To add some interesting colourful light to my egg, I'm going to be using the Adaptalux Studio, of course, and I'm going to be using both the Adaptalux Control Pod 3 and the Pod Mini. I've got the Control Pod 3 down here on it's a full-size tripod, but it's set really low because I want this thing to be below the surface of my table, and I'm going to stretch the flexible arms up to point in from the side while not being in our shot. So I'm going to start off with that. I'm going to put in a red lighting arm and shine it at the side of the egg, and then follow up with a amber lighting arm as well, so that we've got a little bit of variation in color there. I can then move these around to point them at the different parts of the egg that I want, and if I see any color spilling down onto the surface here, which I can see just there, I can bring in a little bit of control on the beam angle just by unscrewing the head of the lighting arm. So I can do that on both my arms and direct this amber light to be a little bit more at the top of the egg, while the red is a little bit lower down. The last thing that I want to do is add some rim lighting. The other side of the egg, of course, is going to be completely dark, and I don't want that to blend into the background completely. So that's where the Pod Mini is going to come in. The control pod has 5 ports, so you can easily use that for small subjects to light from all directions. However, with a really large subject like this, you might want to bring in lighting from a completely different direction, and the Pod Mini is a really easy way to do that. You can plug this in and place it completely opposite to the lighting we already have, and bring in some red light from behind. Now, I'm not even going to try and pose this without looking at the camera, but that should bring in a little bit of red rim lighting on the back of the egg. So here's my my lighting. That's what it looks like on the back of the camera, and you can see that we've gone from ISO 10,000 down to 4,000, so that's a big improvement, but I'm going to push that down a little bit more. I think we're actually on F11 here, so I can push that way down and get a much more reasonable ISO, but I'm leaving it there for the time being because I want to take a look at my actual lighting. As you can see here, I swapped over those two orange and red lighting arms. I liked the orange lower down on the egg with this sort of brownish texture at the bottom here. And then I placed the Pod Mini up on a mini tripod all of its own, just to keep it a little bit more stable and have more control over exactly where that red light is shining on the back side of the egg. Placing that light is really important to get the right sort of shine on the curvature of the egg. You want it to be behind the subject and shining just on the back side, and that light will just shine around the rim of the subject, hence the name rim lighting. There's one last problem here, and that is that this environment is actually quite bright. You can see here that we've got some reflections. These white reflections on the egg are actually coming from this skylight right up there. So I want to control those reflections. I don't hate that there's a little bit of extra light on the egg here, but I want to be able to choose whether or not that's there. And when we start adding smoke, that white light is going to illuminate the smoke up here in white light and really distract from the effect of the red and orange light. So the way I'm going to do that is just by covering over the top of my subject with a black box, and that should keep everything contained in our lighting situation, at least around the subject. With this little hacked together shade, we've eliminated that reflection from the big skylight up there, and our egg is now completely shaded from the ambient light in the room, and the only light that's hitting this egg is the light that we're putting in using our lighting arms. So this should give a nice red effect to any smoke that comes in here. Incidentally, we do have a sale on at the moment on our website for red, yellow and orange effects, so you can get up to 30% off red and amber lighting arms, red, orange and yellow color filters. Hit the link in the description to go and check out that sale. It's a really great opportunity if you want to try out something like this, that it requires a little bit of creative, colorful lighting. So this is our smoke machine. This thing is pretty hefty. You can see that it creates an awful lot of smoke. This thing's designed for filling up rooms and stages with smoke. And I know a lot of you are going to recommend that I get a microfogger or something like that, but this will suffice. There's a couple of ways that we can use a larger smoke machine like this to control the smoke in our environment. We actually got this thing many years ago for shooting a trailer, a product trailer. So we've got one lying around. I'm not going to go and buy a microfogger just for this, but we can take this smoke and control it because, well, as you can see, that's already created a lot of haze in our shot. The smoke is all over the place, and only a couple of those, and this whole room's going to be full of smoke. I don't want that. So let's take a little bit of this smoke and place it exactly where we need it. If you're like me and you don't vape and you don't have a microfogger, getting smoke into your shot might be a little bit tricky. You could maybe use some atmosphere aerosol. We've used that before. But what I'm going to do is place my smoke into a big bottle like this. That way I can squeeze the bottle to create smoke in just very small controlled areas. I don't want too much smoke because I want to still be able to see the egg, but I also want to be able to place that smoke right where I need it to be, in between the lights and the egg. That's going to make the smoke glow all red, look like it's on fire, maybe look like the smoke is indeed fire. And I want to be able to place this smoke really precisely and take my shots at the same time. So I'm going to have one hand on the camera shutter release and one hand on my smoke, placing it around my egg just where I need it to be. So as you can probably tell, the smoke doesn't always go where you want it to go. Placing your smoke in one place and then moving your arms wafts the smoke around and moves it away from where you placed it. So it is a very delicate process and takes some trial and error. It's a very interesting process though, and it's one that is very much aided by that bottle. In fact, the smoke going into the bottle cools it down a little bit, which means you can place it very delicately around your subject and it will stick to the edges of the subject and spread out across the ground. And I think that is actually the placement of the smoke that I liked the most. Placing just a little bit around the base of the egg, it spreads out, it spreads upwards, and it catches all of that light to make it sort of frame the egg a little bit more in our big black void. Of course, the black is no longer black because we've got all of that red smoke creating the interesting background now. So I'm going to take probably quite a lot of shots because I want to filter through them in editing later on and pick the formations of smoke that I like the most. Just be prepared to take a lot of shots yourself. Using smoke and playing around with something as unpredictable as this is definitely going to be a lot of trial and error. Alongside the shot that we've been working on, I've experimented with changing the position of the egg. I've brought the camera a little bit closer in here and I'm trying to capture the top half of the egg only. So I brought my control pod down here and it's now got two white lighting arms with diffusers magnetized onto the ends of the arms there, just to get a nice soft representative color on the bottom half of the egg. On the top half of the egg, it's pretty dark, but I've placed a couple of new lighting arms around the back. So we've now got two pod minis on small mini tripods pointing at the back of the egg. So we've got amber on this side and red on this side, creating rim lighting on both sides. But it's doing more than that, because when we add some smoke in here, it's creating a haze and lots of that light is being captured by the smoke. I'm also placing smoke strategically along the top of the egg and actually reflecting it and storing it up here on the underside of our little surround, so that all of that smoke is interacting with the red and orange light and creating those reds and oranges behind the egg instead of on the egg itself. I think that's a really effective way of creating smoke effects like this, placing your lighting behind the smoke itself and letting it shine through generally picks up a lot more detail in the smoke. Hopefully what this shoot has shown you guys is the importance of taking control of your light. Everything that we've done, moving from that very first image when we had the egg just sat here on this white table to this dramatic looking red fiery image, has been controlling light. We added those backdrops and the shooting surface to control the light reflecting around the surface and the background. We also shaded over the top of the subject to control the ambient light in this room. And then of course we added in our own lighting just where we wanted it to be, in those dramatic reds and oranges. Placing those lights in really specific places really helps when that smoke is added and it all catches the light shining from different directions. I'd like to know from you guys down in the comments whether or not you enjoyed this shoot. Hit the like button if you did, and make sure to hit subscribe so that you're here for more macro photography tutorials in the future. I know this one wasn't particularly macro, but I think it really demonstrates the flexibility of a lighting system like this, especially on larger subjects. That is all that I've got time for now though. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.